We are talking Bonehill Road. This one's directed and written by Todd Sheets. Now, a warning with this film. When you very first watch this film, the opening scene, you are going to see a display of some horrendous acting. And reading some of the kind of the comments and reviews on IMDb, and a lot of people say, oh, I turned it off 10 minutes in because the acting was so crap. And yes, the acting is crap from one particular actor, but I've got to say, he is only in the very first 10 minutes of the movie. So it does get better. So there you go. So a little kind of an explainer warner about this one, because when I first saw this on, I thought, oh my god, this is going to be painful, because there is a really horrendous actor who plays this kind of abusive father at the beginning of the movie. But thankfully he's only in one kind of sort of sequence. The actual story of this one focuses on a mother and daughter as they're getting away from said abusive husband/father, and kind of go on the road, and they are ultimately trying to get to the grandpa's house, and they end up having a kind of an accident in this kind of like a kind of lonely sort of stretch of road, and they think they've maybe hit some type of animal. Of course, with the cover, and if you know what this movie's about, yes, so there's a werewolf, actually a pack of werewolves, and not only that, there is not only the threat of a werewolf, but the threat of a serial killer who happens to be in the area as well. So it's double the threat for these two girls as they kind of try and flee for cover to this kind of old abandoned, what they think is abandoned farmhouse, where they meet kind of a few other characters, including said serial killer. But that's not the only threat. Of course, you have this kind of slew of werewolves on the outside as well. So there you go. Now, when I first watched this movie, I was reminded of a movie called Monster, which was a very similar setup actually. It has these kind of a mother and daughter who have a car accident, have to fend off a kind of an animal from the, a supernatural animal from the kind of the outside. So it's very kind of like, oh, this is very similar to that movie. That movie had Monster actually had a lot higher production value than this one. I think the main thing with this one is you'll notice the budget here, because the budget is very low on this movie, but the werewolves look great. Yeah, I was really impressed with the werewolf makeup here. The actual werewolf designs and costumes look incredible. I mean, I think, I can't remember the actual budget off the top of my head, but it's no more than like 20,000, something along the lines of like $20,000, something like that. But the werewolf makeup and the costumes look incredible. I thought they were really good, really impressed considering the budget here. I mean, yeah, they're not. There's one silly one where there's a female werewolf that looks ridiculous, but for the most part, the werewolves look really cool. I've got to say, I really like the werewolf makeup. There are some gore shots here on the subject of makeup which don't look very good. Now, there is a lot of kind of like brutal kills, intestines being ripped out, that sort of thing. But the makeup is, and the gore effects, the prosthetics are a little bit, it looks like cabbage falling out of people's, with like, corn syrup on it. Yeah, so the actual prosthetics of the wounds and the kind of like the injuries, I don't think is very good, but the makeup on the werewolves is very good. It's a weird, I don't know whether they could do so well on one and pretty crap on the other. So that's your kind of your aesthetics. The other kind of weird technical thing I want to talk about in this movie before I kind of more go on to the plot and the characters is the director's obsession with close-ups. He really likes to go in close up, and it's a little disconcerting. It's it's like very much like a TV style of shooting, because when you watch a TV show, to try and obviously they have a lot less budget, they get in right close. They don't have to worry about the kind of like the backdrop and the locations and the set dressing and everything. That's why in TVs you'll get a lot more close-ups than you will do in films, which have a lot more wide shots. So this has but it goes over. It's like extreme close-up. Man, it's a little weird. Anyway, let me circle back to the acting. So, at the beginning of this video, obviously I mentioned there's a really poor acting, and there is. And the acting, I've got to say, is a mixed bag throughout this movie. Once you get past this first guy, who is, I'm sorry to say, horrendous, if you're watching this, horrendous actor. Our two main leads fare a lot better, especially when they're not acting against this guy. I have actually got to say, the kind of relationship between the mother and daughter I actually quite liked. And I've got to say the daughter is played to be somewhat unlikable. She's played to be like a real millennial. I mean, this mother has been beaten up at the beginning of the movie by her husband. She's injured in a car accident. She's scratched by a werewolf. She's stabbed by a serial killer, and yet she's always kind of like looking out for her daughter, who is just whining and whinging the whole time. I don't know if that was intentional, because it makes the daughter a little bit kind of unlikable, and the fact that she really does kind of just seem like somewhat entitled and constantly need to be mollycoddled and reassured, very much like your stereotypical millennial thing. But nonetheless, I thought it actually probably is quite a realistic take on maybe a modern relationship. That was quite good. The main recognisable star you're going to have here is Linnea Quigley, of course, a very famous scream queen. She is only in a short portion of the movie, really only one sort of scene, so she's relatively kind of short-lived in this one, but it's nice to kind of see her, and obviously she's in the kind of thick of it when it comes to the violence of it all, shall we say. Some of the story plots I didn't understand, I will be honest. We were introduced to a bunch of other female characters, and I have no idea why they were there. It doesn't really do a good enough job of explaining you what these characters, there's three extra characters, Linnea Quigley being one of them. They're in this particular house. I just don't know why they were there. It's never really explained. I mean, it almost seems like they were living there. I don't know, but I don't know why. The movie does a very good job of kind of getting that through. And I've got to say, the werewolves are actually sidelined for a good portion of the movie while we're dealing with the kind of the serial killer element, which almost takes up the bulk of the running time, to be quite honest. So it's actually less of a werewolf movie, more of a serial killer movie. But the last act is more about the kind of the werewolves and stuff. But it's not a full-on werewolf film, although the werewolf, obviously, attack at the end is quite enjoyable. It's definitely the most, the most kind of like well-produced part of the movie, because obviously we have all these kind of like pack of werewolves coming in, and I thought the werewolf actually looks pretty good. Apart from this one female one, which I won't spoil for it because it looks ridiculous. But there you go. So overall, this film is a little bit of a mixed bag, I will say. It's enjoyable. It is fun. There's quite a lot of action. There's quite a lot of kind of like on-screen kind of violence and death and gore and stuff like that. It's not all particularly well executed. The acting's a little bit kind of like of a mixed bag, from acceptable to pretty horrible. Stellar werewolf effects. I think the serial killer maybe drew focus a little bit too much from the story, if I'm honest. But I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I feel it's worth watching if you are a low-budget horror movie fan or just a werewolf fan, because the effects are so good in regards to, the kind of the pantheon of werewolf movies. Considering it's a low budget, I think it fares pretty well. So I would recommend this movie, but don't be expecting cinematic genius. I don't think you've got to be expecting you're going to be watching a schlocky horror. Anyway, so 6 out of 10. If you've seen it, what do you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.